During the last couple of days, I spent some time here on this lake together with my friend Dani, who is a wildlife photographer living in northern Sweden, and she actually invited me to her home, and we had this idea about taking some pictures of the osprey here on this lake. Since Dani lives close by, she knew that there was an osprey, or at least she observed one in the past several times, but she didn't have the time to check it out a lot before my arrival at least this season, because she had many different projects and workshops ongoing. So a few days ago, on a very calm evening, we took the canoes and we went out on the lake to see if we find the osprey, to see where it is, how it behaves. And in this video I want to talk a bit about how we proceeded, the challenges we were facing, what I would do differently in retrospect, and of course I will also show you some nice footage from the osprey. So when we went out on the lake with the canoe, it was really a beautiful evening, some clouds but no wind, and this makes it so much easier. First of all, physically you don't need to row so much, not need to put so much energy, and second of all, once you are in a position where you found your subject, let's say the osprey, and you want to take some pictures, you can really focus on taking these pictures and you don't need to constantly reposition your canoe. Because at the moment, even if there would be an osprey here, I could take a few pictures, but like 10 seconds later the canoe would be in a not so good position in terms of background, maybe foreground. So this is really not an ideal scenario. But 2 days ago we had this really calm day and it was just so peaceful on this lake with a bit of sunlight and the Swedish nature around me. Luckily, one animal that we didn't see on the lake was mosquitoes. There were plenty in the forest and on the shoreline, but once we made it out to the more or less open water, there were no more mosquitoes, which was really nice. And on the way to the place where Dani observed the osprey the last time, we saw an Arctic tern that was perched quite beautifully on some dead wood in the water. So we took some first footage there. And a bit later we heard the osprey calling. So we got a bit closer and we saw it on top of a tree, and it was afterwards flying to another tree very close by, and in one of these trees it actually had its nest. We took some first shots, but what was a bit tricky and challenging was that since you are in the canoe almost at water level and the trees have a height of several meters, it's not a great angle, because as a background you will see the sky. So what we tried is actually go around, which doesn't solve the problem that you have the sky in the background, but since it was evening we had some nice orange colors in the background, and we tried to do some silhouettes of the osprey sitting on top of the tree against this beautiful sky. Dani was taking pictures with her R5 and the RF 100 to 500 millimeter lens. Unfortunately, my RF 100 to 500 is currently in Switzerland, so I decided to just take my RF 600 millimeter f4, and I felt a bit limited by the fixed focal length at some points, because we were in the same canoe and she could just vary a bit more and include a bit more of the surroundings. I had only the top of the tree with the osprey, and I kind of wished to also take some footage where we see the surrounding trees and a bit of the lake. So I decided when I come the next time, I will take a shorter focal length as well. So we decided to try to come early in the morning. And this morning actually we left at 2 AM when it was still not completely dark, but it was during dusk. We went out with the canoe early in the morning. We took a camouflage cover, like some kind of net, which of course only works well if you don't move at all. Otherwise the animals will still see the human shape that moves. So in the open water, where we obviously needed to move also to row, it was not very useful. But in an environment like this, once you had the canoe positioned, it worked quite well. However, the problem was a bit the canoe. As you can see, it's really a flashy yellow. So I'm really sure that the osprey saw it. I'm not sure if the osprey kind of associated the canoe with humans or not. I know that for many birds, they don't associate a car with human, only if the person exits. They usually fly away, or if the person opens the door or something, or rolls down the window and they see the person. So no idea how it was here. We took some pictures with some distance, and I also used my RF 100 to 300 a bit more. And the osprey were flying by, but our main goal was basically to take some pictures when they are hunting for fish. And we didn't observe this. The osprey were flying a couple of times and they were like circling above us. We were not sure if they were checking us out, or I also realized that there was some poo on the rock next to us. I'm not sure if this poo was from some gulls, if it was from Arctic terns, or if it was in fact from the osprey. Dani also observed some fishes in the water around us, so maybe it wanted to hunt there, maybe it wanted to look for us. But we managed to get some shots, and then we decided to basically go back. And I came back now to basically scout a bit more, keep my distance, and just see if I see the osprey going for some fish. So my recommendation when you go out on a lake with the canoe to take pictures of birds is really choose a day where there is basically no wind, no waves, because it makes your life much easier and also a bit safer because the canoe is more stable. Of course, it depends in which direction you put the canoe, it can be better or worse, but it was definitely nicer with on a calm day. Then the longer and heavier the lens, the more unstable you will get in the canoe because you will lean more back and this tilts the canoe a bit more. So it's definitely easier and maybe more comfortable with a bit shorter and lighter lens. Obviously, for example, the 100 to 300 2.8 had the advantage compared to a RF 100 to 500 f4.5 to 7.1 that during these early morning hours I had more light on the sensor. And that's the next thing, you will need a quite short shutter speed because the canoe will always move a bit. And even if you have a good image stabilizer, there is the risk that the image will be shaky. So what I would recommend is setting a short shutter speed depending on your focal length and how much wind there is, maybe a thousandth of a second or something. I sometimes also went to longer shutter speeds, like a 500th of a second, but then I really needed to take several pictures to have at least one that was perfectly sharp. And this movement of the canoe and therefore in the viewfinder also make it much more harder for the autofocus to really acquire a target, because especially if the osprey was small in the frame, I had some troubles to use the eye autofocus, where you needed to use the single point or spot autofocus, and this doesn't work well if you are shaky, if you move too much. So a shorter focal length and including a bit more of the environment can definitely help here. If you want more tips about bird photography, please check out my ebook. I put a link below. So as I mentioned before, my goal for this evening was just to go out with my binoculars and observe a bit how the osprey is behaving, if it's actually hunting on this lake, if yes, where exactly. But I'm really struggling with the wind because it's very hard to even get out there. It's several hundred meters. And I want to observe it over a longer time, because it's not like the osprey is hunting every 5 minutes. On this evening and also this morning, sometimes it was sitting there for half an hour. And with the current wind, even in 10 minutes, I move quite a lot. And after probably 5 minutes, I need to reposition myself again. And this will just be exhausting, and probably I will also get more attention if I constantly need to row myself back into position. So I think I will actually head back now and try again tomorrow, when it's hopefully a bit calmer, or otherwise the day after tomorrow. I'm still hoping that we get this special shot that we were hoping for. But anyway, we're already quite happy with some of the footage we have. And I think most of the people that watch this video know Dani's channel anyway. But if you don't know it or haven't watched it in a while, please go there. It's just really relaxing and amazing to see the nature that she shows us from both here in Sweden, but also Patagonia, Iceland, Mexico, and many other places.